Hi, everybody. So today we're going to be talking about 5.3, which is writing proportions. So right now I'd want to make sure that you have your math composition notebook out. You also have a writing utensil, and make sure you are writing down everything that's on my screen as we go through. Okay, to begin, let's make sure we write down the learning target, which is I will be able to write and solve proportions using mental math. So we're going to be talking about writing and solving proportions. And today is mostly going to be about using mental math. So let's hop down. It says one way to write a proportion is to use a table. So we're going to kind of talk about how do we write a proportion using a table. So I'm going to walk you through a couple different ways. So make sure you write this table down. Okay, I do want you to copy this table down. So pause it, copy it down. Okay, and now we're going to write the different ways in which we can write this proportion. So the first way is to use the columns to write a proportion. All right, so use the columns. So remember, columns is from top to bottom. So we would essentially go, it would be like this, and it would be like this. These would be our two proportions. And then remember, to set up a proportion, it's a fraction, and we want to label it. So we would write down 2 ringtones over 6 ringtones. And then equals, because the proportion always has an equal sign in between the fractions. And then we literally just write the second one, which is 3 ringtones over X ringtones. Okay. So that is the first way to do it. All right. So just a note, the numerators have the same units. And the denominators have the same units as well. Okay, make sure you get that copied down. You can pause it if you need. Okay, the second way is to use rows, all right? Use rows to write a proportion, okay? So let's just color code these so it's clear. Okay, so remember, with columns, we did this. It was these two, like that. With rows is the opposite way. So it's going to be like this. The ringtones together and then the dollars together. Okay? So we are going to write 2 ringtones over 3 ringtones. So we're going this way now. Okay? Then an equal sign, and then we do $6. Oops, that was messy. And then we do $6 over X dollars. Uh-oh, and I just noticed I made a mistake up here. So make sure that you guys fix this. I labeled my units wrong. Okay, that's my fault. These should be dollars because as you can see here, it says dollars. So that's my bad. So make sure to change those. Okay, so when you're using rows to write a proportion, notice that here in each fraction, okay, units are on each side of the proportion, okay? So the same units are on each side of the proportion, okay? Okay, so make sure you have that down. So those are the 2 ways using a table, okay? You either need to make sure the same units are both in the numerators and the denominators, or you need to make sure that the same units are on each side, okay? So the units are on each side. Okay, let's take a peek at an example of this. So example 1, writing a proportion. It says a chef increases the amount of ingredients in a recipe to make a proportional recipe. The new recipe has 6 cups of black beans. We're just going to write that. 6 cups of black beans. Write a proportion that gives the number of X tomatoes in the new recipe. Organize the information in a table. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to write a table. Okay. So when I write the table, I'm going to do this in blue. I'm going to put black beans over here. And then this is going to be the OG, which stands for original recipe. Okay. Then this is going to be the new recipe. So I'm just making a table. Black beans, and then the other ingredient is the tomatoes. Okay, so I'm making my table. Okay, there's my table. So let's take a peek at the original recipe, which over here is the original recipe. So how many black beans are there? Well, there's 1.5 cups. So right here under black beans, I'm going to write 1.5 cups. And then tomatoes. We got to see how many tomatoes. I see 1 tomato. Okay, so I'm going to write 1 tomato here. Then the new recipe. Let's see. It says the new recipe has 6 cups of black beans right here. So we're going to write 6 cups. And then right here, well, it says we don't know. It's represented by X tomatoes. Okay, so we're going to fill it in using that. Okay, so now the second part that we're going to do is we're going to write a proportion, okay, with this information. So remember, we can write it either way. We can either write it using columns or rows. I'm going to write it using columns, which means I'm going to take this information and put it on one side of the equal sign. So I'm going to write 1.5 cups over 1 tomato equals, and then I'm going to put the other column on the other side, 6 cups over X tomatoes. Okay, remember you could have done it using rows. That also would work. But that is how we would write a proportion showing the old recipe, the new recipe, and how many tomatoes we're going to need. Okay, and this is going to help you when we're solving proportions, which is going to bring us to example 2. So go ahead and head down to example 2. So example 2, solving proportions using mental math, okay? So it says solve 3/2 equals x over 8. So we are going to write down 3 over 2 equals, well, here. I'm going to show it to you using 2 ways. Even though it says mental math, we're going to do the first way using mental math, okay? And for this way, how we're going to do it is I'm going to write down the proportion 3 over 2 equals x over 8. And what we're going to do is when we're talking about proportions, we want to see how did they get from this denominator to this denominator, and how did they get from this numerator to this numerator? Well, since there's an x here, we don't know what x is. So therefore, we don't know how they got from 3 to x. But to figure out the x, we can look at the denominator. What do you have to multiply or divide? So it's always going to be multiplication or division when you're talking about these tables, okay? Always going to be multiplication or division. What do you have to multiply or divide 2 by in order to get 8? So think about it. 2 times what equals 8? Well, hopefully you're thinking 4. So 2 times 4 equals 8, which means if this is a proportion, you have to do the same thing to the 3 to get this x. So you're going to do 3 times 4 to get to the x, which would give you, well, 3 times 4 would give you 12. So let's write it over here. 3 over 2 equals 12 over 8. Again, you multiply by 4 to get there. You multiply by 4 to get there, okay? So your x equals 12. That's how you would solve your x, okay? So that's using mental math. Now I'm going to show you it using the cross product, which is our new method that we learned in 5.2. So for the cross product, you're going to write 3 over 2 equals x over 8. Then remember with the cross product, you multiply the diagonals and you set them equal to each other. So the first diagonal, it's going to be 3 times 8 equals 2 times x, okay? Because you multiply the diagonals together. 3 times 8 will give me 24. Okay, so that's going to give me 24 equals 2x. And now we literally just solve for x. Well, in order to solve for x, I know I need to divide by 2. Going back to chapter 3 and chapter 4, These cancel, and I'm left with x equals 24 divided by 2 is 12. Notice, did we get the same answer for x both ways? We did. We got x equals 12 for both ways. So cross product and mental math, both good tools. Mental math, however, you won't always be able to find it using mental math. So that's why the cross product is important, and that is why it's important that we have our algebra skills. Okay, so right now I would like you to pause the video and I would like you to solve these proportions. I would like you to do mental math for this one. Okay, mental math. And then I would like you to use the cross product for this one. All right. So pause your video and complete these problems, and then we'll go over them as a class. Okay, so let's take a peek at number 3, okay? So number 3, it says 5 over 8 equals 20 over D. Well, if we're using cross product, we're going to multiply the diagonals. It's going to be 8 times 20 equals 5 times D. 8 times 20 is going to give me 160 equals 5D. Then again, to solve for D, I am just going to use my chapter 3 and chapter 4 rules and divide by 5, divide by 5. That's going to leave me with D equals 32. Okay, so I know that D equals 32. To check our work, we could use mental math. 5 times what equals 20? Well, 5 times 4. And then check. Does 8 times 4 equal 32? Yes, it does. So we know we're correct. Okay, for number 4, we're going to use mental math. So 7 times what equals 14? Well, hopefully you said 7 times 2 equals 14. So then again, well, this one we have to be kind of careful because we know that it's going to be z times 2 equals 10. But don't mix it up. You're not doing 10 times 2. You're doing z times 2 equals 10. Okay, so what times 2 equals 10? Well, I know 5 times 2 equals 10. So therefore, our z equals 5. You also could go backwards if you wanted, and you could do, I'll do it over here, 7 over z equals 14 over 10. You could go from the reverse. 14 divided by 2 equals 7. So then to get z, you want to divide 10 by 2. All right, so either way, you should get z equals 5. Okay, that is lesson 5.3. Make sure you have all those notes down in your math composition notebook, and we will work on the big ideas assignment in class. All right, thanks for watching.